Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about adding new features after launch. And by that I mean, I'm going to talk about why it can be very difficult sometimes to add a new feature after the game has shipped. And I know you've all had this experience where you get a new game and you're playing it and you're having a lot of fun, but within an hour, you're like, I can't believe this happens. I can't believe I can't do this, or I can't believe this interface is like this. And you wonder why they just don't change it. Like, in addition to all the bugs they may be fixing in the next patch, why don't they just fix this one? Why don't they just add this feature? Now, if you've watched this channel for more than one video, you know that my answer is going to be what I always say, which is money. In this particular case, making a new feature and integrating it into the game just takes a lot of time. And that time is money. And you have to consider it in the list of all the other priorities that a game developer has after a new game goes out. You may be finding yourself asking questions like, would a new feature make sense to prioritize over bug fixing? Would this new feature make sense to prioritize over new content that we're planning to have in the DLC? Would this new feature make sense to put in now and not just, put it in the sequel? Would it make sense to take some people down to work on this feature when we could be starting a whole new game? These are all questions that game developers have to ask themselves. And that's not really, though, a satisfying answer. It's not specific to adding a new feature. It's just all part of the money equation that you're always thinking about when you're developing games. Now, there is also the question when you want to add a new feature is, do you still have access to the team that made the base game? Because those new features are going to need design and code and art and sound and testing. And all of that would be done a lot better with people who worked on the base game. And you may not still have access to them. If you work at a company, they may have been reassigned to other projects. Maybe somebody left after the game shipped, so you may not have access to them. But those two answers, money and team, they're generic. They're answers for almost any question you might want to ask about why don't they just do X. So let me talk about two specific responses to the difficulty in adding a new feature to a game after launch. In other words, I'm going to talk about two issues that arise when you're thinking about trying to add a feature into a game that you've already shipped. Now, the first one is just that adding that feature may be a lot harder than you think it is. And especially if you're playing the game and you go, I can't believe they just didn't put this in. Maybe they did think about it. Maybe putting it in is a lot harder than you think it is. And if it had been easier, it would have been in the shipped game. And it's not any easier now that it's shipped. In fact, as I mentioned, it's going to be a lot harder once the game ships. But I'll give you an example. And this bugs me in a lot of games I play, especially action RPGs. I don't play a lot of shooter games, a lot of shooter looters, but I do play a lot of action RPGs. And I've noticed that frequently my companions, anyone in my group that's not under my control, any ally that's not under my control, which even if the game doesn't allow you to have companions, it may be nearby friendly guards, or even just townspeople. A monster gets into a town and the townspeople are running around. They keep getting in my line of fire. And maybe sometimes I even accidentally kill them. And some games let you accidentally kill. I may accidentally shoot them. And some games let you accidentally kill them. And this is frustrating. And you're just like, why do people run into my line of fire? Well, guess what? It's actually a lot harder to code that than you think it is. And here's all the questions that have to be answered and considered by a designer coming up with a design before a programmer can even tackle the difficulty of getting this implemented. Here are some of the things you have to think about. Who's your target player? Some games don't have you click on someone and mark them as your target. So you're saying the AI for all these NPCs have to try to guess who it is you're trying to shoot, even before you've shot. Because I think a lot of you get mad that you're trying to shoot somebody and somebody's getting in your way. How do they know that? You're thinking, well, they've got to look out at you. They have eyes in the back of their head, which, of course, in the game code they can have. And they're looking at you and they're trying to guess who you're shooting at. But then here's the problem. You're moving. Maybe your target is also moving. So now they have to try to guess who it is you're shooting and then somehow get out of the way in this environment, which is not static. And then what about all the other targets? Do they have to stay out of the way between you and every potential target you may want to shoot at? Because that's a big spread. That's a lot of places they can't exist in. Then you have to ask yourself about cover, because a lot of AIs do try to reach cover. They're looking at who's shooting at them, and they're trying to think of getting something between that shooter and themselves. So they're thinking about cover. The last thing they're thinking about is, okay, is there some cover out there that I can get to be safe from being shot at by that bad guy that won't get in the player's line of sight between the player and all the other targets? What about all the other companions? Are they going to stay out of their line of sight between everything? Now we're talking about dozens of line of sight calculations that you're doing every tick. Every companion to every target, the player to every target, and then all the cover. And then it's starting to get really complicated. Wait a minute. What about the other companions and their targets? So now you're trying to stay out of the way of the companions shooting at their targets and targets shooting at that companion. People who aren't trying to shoot at you, but you happen to be in the way. Where do they stand in all this? And how do you prioritize this? And if getting out of the player's line of sight isn't the number one priority, then you're still going to see this issue happen. Now, if the companion can't make sure that all the above conditions are met, you're still going to find things to complain about beyond them getting in your way. You're going to see, hey, my two companions get in each other's way, or my companions never seem to take cover. You're basically causing a cascade effect of new issues to happen when you're trying to solve that one issue. I'll throw one more thing out there that it made me laugh. If your companions are melee skilled, meaning they're not shooting at the bad guys, they're running up to hit them with a sword or a hammer or something, literally at that point, how are they supposed to stay out of your line of sight? Because you're basically saying, here's a target, I want you to stay out of a 100 degree or 120 degree area between me and them, which very much limits where this companion can do their melee attack. It's probably too limiting. It's asking too much. And of course, you'd be really upset if you were a melee player and your companions are always yelling, get out of my way, get out of my way. So, just wanted to point out, it sounds like a simple problem, very complicated solution. So now let's go to another one, which also seems simple and has a completely different reason why it won't be implemented post-ship. Let's say you want to make a new inventory sorting mode called Sort by Recently Added. Now, your game may already allow the player to sort by name, by item type, by value, by weight. So it seems like, well, that's pretty easy. Just add an extra one. And when I say sort by recently added, it sorts by the order in which you pick them up. Here's the problem. That means that every item when it enters your inventory had to have been time-stamped. And you probably weren't already time-stamping it, which means you have to add timestamps, which is not part of the inventory item data. Now, you can add it, and you can figure out how to make that new save game compatible with the old one, but the old save games don't have those timestamps. So what are you supposed to do? So the player loads a save game from before that feature existed. What is supposed to happen? Now, I can think of several solutions to that. One, you don't allow sort by recently added on any save game that was saved before that feature got added via a patch to the game. This is probably a bad solution. Most players aren't going to understand. I'm sorry, the patch note said it added sort by recent. Where's sort by recent? Another solution, which is simple, and solves the problem, and your players will hate, is just put random timestamps on all the existing inventory. So when the player says sort by recently added, all the items that got added before that feature was added that have no timestamps just get randomly assigned a timestamp. They won't randomize every time you hit it, because once they get randomly assigned a timestamp, they won't need another one. But most players will be like, wait, I remember I just picked up that gun. Why is it down near the bottom? It will look like a bug. And then they're going to submit bugs, and you won't be able to fix it. One possible way to do this, which is complex, but you could do, is to scan all previous save games made with this player character to try to determine inventory ordering. For example, if there are 10 save games that have this player character that were made before you added this feature, you can go look at the inventories that are in those older save games and figure out timestamps for things. So like if the next to last save game they have the gun, and then the save game before that they don't, well, you know that gun was added before anything else that was in the older inventory. Because of that, you're still kind of doing random timestamps, but within a grouping. Like if 4 items are in this save game and they're not in the save game prior, you can at least, they have more recent timestamps than the stuff that was in the prior, but you don't know which ones, so you just have to assign them random newer ones, and then you can go backwards in time through all the save games and try to do that. It's still going to have problems. It's better, but A, it's really complex. B, it depends on the player having those older save games. And C, it will still introduce what look like bugs, where the player knows they found a gun and picked it up before they picked up that quest item. But because they did both of those before they saved the game, the game doesn't know which one you picked up first and just randomly assign them timestamps. So, problem. And that's the general issue with this one is sometimes your old saves aren't compatible with an idea you have for a feature. To put this feature in and have it work required some information in the save games that just isn't there. So, those are the 2 biggest reasons why I think you don't see certain features added to an existing game, besides the money reasons and the access to the original team reasons. Very specific to adding features after you launch. 1, it's still really hard to add the feature, and 2, it may not work with all the previous save games. Anyway, that's my thoughts on adding features after launch.